Take it you can see me. A technologist I am not. Few minutes, just a few minutes, we'll go. No, I've got it. I've just put everything on a bit early to make sure I can set it up. Well, we're 5 minutes early, but I think we can start. Right. Some of you are making jokes about my video titles. The reason is there's actually a bit of internet censorship on COVID-19, and YouTube are posting the videos, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself or the videos. That was kind of the thinking behind that. Most of them have changed now, though, so they look a bit more sensible now. Yeah, sorry about the coming and going. Me learning to use the technology. Yeah, I think I've learned how to slow the rolling thing down. James, good evening from South Africa. Right, first question here. What's happening to the statistics from Latin America and Africa? Well, I actually haven't heard any statistics. Let's just go on a big picture for a minute. I haven't actually heard any statistics from South America, but the African ones are interesting. Officially, there's one case in Egypt at the moment, and officially that's the only case in Africa. But of course this is this is remarkably unlikely to be the case. I mean, this afternoon on the video we looked at African countries which were likely to import the virus and less likely to import the virus, but there's quite a few that are very likely. Because the thing in Africa, there's massive infrastructure projects going on in Africa, and these are usually Chinese run. I mean, what the Chinese are doing in Africa is absolutely amazing, actually. So there's an awful lot of coming and going. And I did mention earlier on today's video, but something really concerned me. The director of the Ethiopian Airlines said that, excuse me, I've had a cold for about the past month, I'm fine. He said that because the World Health Organization were allowing flights, then there was no health problems in flying between China and Ethiopia, and therefore it would be done in the best interests of the airline. I mean, this is just really quite frightening stuff that people are just carrying on as normal, as if this wasn't an issue. So African figures, I have had emails from African doctors, and they do believe that there are cases in their countries. But the diagnostic kits are only just arriving now from the World Health Organization. So it's just becoming, the picture in Africa should start to clear fairly soon as WHO testing kits become available. But at the moment, there's very little diagnostic facility. And as well as that, of course, the local nurses and doctors won't have seen the disease before, so they won't have a refined sort of diagnosis based on the clinical picture like they will in China. So I suspect there's quite a few cases in Africa, unfortunately. And this is a big problem because places like Africa and Iran have been mentioned today that have weaker health systems. So this means they're going to have less ability to monitor infections. And it also means they're going to have less ability to treat the severe cases as well, and less ability to quarantine and curtail spread. So it really is quite a problem that the disease will take hold in these poorer areas, I strongly suspect, unfortunately. So Ryan says the infections are accelerating. I think that's basically true, Ryan. On a global scale, that's certainly true. Now, what we're actually seeing, if we're to believe the figures from China, is a reduction in the rates of infection in China. Actually, less cases in China. Now, we know the figures from China aren't accurate. The Chinese authorities admit that their figures aren't accurate. That's known. We know that. We know they're not accurate figures. We know the gross underestimates of what the actual figures are. But there's two reasons why personally I believe that the rates are going down in China. The first reason is that the Chinese have taken what really should be called draconian measures to reduce the spread. So Beijing, for example, is virtually shut down. People are working from home. You need passes to go in and out of blocks of flats. Measures have been taken which couldn't be taken in any Western country, really, or not realistic, or not easily. So they've had a massive shutdown of the country, and of course Wuhan province, Wuhan and Hubei province have been shut down for ages. You're not allowed to drive your car in Hubei province, for example. And even in other Chinese cities, then people are staying at home and food is being delivered. So this massive shutdown, and that is going to reduce the rate of spread because people aren't coming into contact with each other. It's going to slow it down. And this is brilliant because it means the Chinese are buying the rest of us some time. It gives us a little more time to prepare, which is exactly what we need. We need time to prepare because this infection is becoming a pandemic. It's not realistic that this infection is going to stop now. It is going to spread. I believe it's going to spread to your country and to my country pretty well, regardless of where you are watching at the moment. So the other reason the infection rates are down in China is because epidemics in particular areas have a natural sort of evolution. So you'll get more and more cases and more cases. And then basically all the people that can be infected will be infected. It can't go on rising forever. And then the cases start to drop off a bit or level off a bit. And I think what we're seeing in Hubei and Wuhan is that the epidemic is reaching its natural peak in those areas. And it's caused absolute chaos in its wake, but it's reaching a natural peak now. So in Wuhan, I would expect the cases to start to level off now with no increase in cases. And then in a few weeks' time, the natural evolution of the epidemic would suggest that the infection rate, the new infection rate, would start to go down in Wuhan, which of course is brilliant. But the curve of the epidemic, this getting more and more cases, then levelling off and then getting less and less cases. In all the other parts of China, we're still on the up. The curve is still going up. It's just being held artificially down by what can only be called the incredible and some might say draconian measures that the Chinese government are taking to stop people coming into contact with each other. So that is why we're not seeing the increase in China. Now, this won't make it go away, but what it will do, What this will do is it means it'll be longer until the epidemic comes. It's like putting it all back. It's delaying everything. So the overall number of people who are going to be infected by this will probably be the same, but they'll get infected over a longer period of time. Less people per day, but over a longer period of time is what is probably going to happen. So that's why we're seeing reduced infection rates in China now. But the infection rates, of course, in other parts of the world are massively increasing. So, for example, since yesterday, Friday, and today in Korea, the number of confirmed cases have more than doubled in South Korea. So incredible increase in cases there. And I suspect the same is true in North Korea as well. Although officially there are no cases in North Korea, which of course is completely ludicrous. I did mention a couple of days ago that South Korean observers... Now, the South Korean observers of North Korea watch North Korea quite passionately. To them, it's the same country. That they love North Korea as they love South Korea. I've actually worked with Korean academics in Cambodia, Korean academics and doctors. And they're very thorough people, very hard-working people, and very good scientists. And they monitor the North Korean situation quite carefully. And they're actually saying there's an increase in cremations in North Korea, a huge increase in cremations. So what is going on in that sinister, secretive state, we don't really know. But whatever it is not good. There's an increase in cases. Likewise, Vietnam. Now, all the schools in all of Vietnam are closed, I've been told, till the end of March. At the end of March at the earliest. Like, all the schools in Vietnam are closed, as indeed they are in much of China, and teachers are giving people work online in China. Not so much in Vietnam, because the internet isn't as widespread in Vietnam as it is in China. Vietnam is a very, very poor country, unfortunately. Although a lot of people have mobile phones, so they can be learning from their mobile phone signals. So to shut all the schools down is quite a draconian measure in some ways. Areas in Vietnam near the border of China have been quarantined and closed off. Because what you have in places like North Korea and Vietnam is you have an awful lot of going back and forward across the border. There's, shall we say, informal trade between Vietnam, North Korea and China. So there's a lot of coming and going there. So the cases in Vietnam will also be increasing, unfortunately. And the other thing about the increasing cases is that there's cases now popping up that can't trace a direct link with China. So there's not what the World Health Organization call an epidemiological link. There is a loss of the epidemiological link. So this guy that was the super spreader from Bournemouth, I think it was, in the south of England, he'd gone to Singapore, he'd met someone from China, he'd flown back from Singapore to France and infected 4 people. He flew back from France to England, infected about another 5 or 6 people. But you could kind of relate that to this Chinese case, which you could in turn relate to Wuhan. But there's cases popping up now where you can't do that. And the problem with that is it may well mean that there is community self-sustaining transmission. In other words, there's enough cases now in certain communities that you can catch it from your next door neighbour who's never been to China, who's never been to Singapore. Because there seems to be self-perpetuating community-based spread. Now, this hasn't been officially recognised yet, but the way the figures are going, it would seem to be the case. And we are at the start of a pandemic, unfortunately. So that was Ryan's question. The infections are accelerating. Right. Davood, do you think we are probably faced mutations? Okay. Right. Now, I've been in contact with quite a few people from Iran. They've been emailing me, and I've been emailing them for a few days now. And the people that I've been talking to in Iran say the official case number in Iran, which is just a few, I can't remember what it is, 20 or so, is a massive underestimate. And what's more concerning is doctors there apparently, according to my sources, which are highly reliable. Doctors there are saying that the disease condition seems to be more severe in Iran than the reports they're reading from China. So the question is, do I think that a mutation in the virus could account for more virulent disease in Iran? Well, first of all, we don't know for sure there is more virulent disease in Iran, but it looks like there is. And what particularly concerned me is doctors there have reported the respiratory failure, as you might expect, as a cause of death. But they've also said there's viral myocarditis. Now, the myocardium is the muscle in the heart, and that can be infected with viral particles. And the trouble is that the viral myocarditis can lead to viral myocardopathy, disease of the heart muscle, and this can lead to heart failure and death. So I was really quite concerned to see that there seems to be quite a few cases of the virus damaging hearts in Iran. Now, could this be due to mutation? The simple answer to that is yes, absolutely it could. Now, what happens with this particular COVID-19 virus is it's a single strand of RNA, and that means it can mutate really quite quickly and quite readily. So every day the virus is mutating. It's mutating all the time. So sometimes it will mutate, and as a result of the mutation, it will become less virulent and less infectious. Then that strain of the virus will infect less people, and if it's infecting less people, then obviously the virus is going to die out. It'll die out, so that's good. But other viruses can mutate and become more infectious and more virulent, and those ones, because they're mutated to become more infectious, are going to go and infect more and more people and potentially be more virulent and cause more severe disease. So the ones that mutate to become more infectious are going to spread, and the ones that mutate to become less infectious are going to die out. So it's kind of an evolution amongst these viruses, that they are going to there is a risk that it will become more virulent and more dangerous. So has that happened in Iran? We have no idea. Is it possible that's happened in Iran? Certainly it's possible. Could that explain the apparent increase in case fatality rate and morbidity? Morbidity is disease, the severity of the conditions that are being reported from Iran, potentially. But the bottom line is we're not sure yet, because we're not getting the data out of Iran, apart from a few people that are emailing me. So it can't be confirmed, but I'm sure they've no reason to lie to me, and the people there in Iran are worried. And one of my contacts in Iran today said, please tell the world about this, because we're suffering. So quite concerning, really, the situation in Iran. And many people in Iran don't have access to good healthcare. So it means that those that get complications, some of them aren't going to get effective treatment for those complications, and of course that will increase the case fatality rate, because if 15% or so of people get quite severe disease, when you were saying about 82% got mild disease, that leaves about another 20% who's going to get more severe disease, and 5% of those are going to get critical. 5% of the total number are going to get critical disease, which requires big time medical intervention to keep them alive. So if that medical intervention is not available, then those people aren't going to make it, unfortunately. And even with the 20%, so the 15% or so that are severe without being critical, they're probably going to need oxygen to get them through bad periods as well. So they are somewhat dependent on medical care as well. So it's quite a concern, really, these people in areas where the health facilities are less well developed. So is that caused by mutation? Yes, it could be, but we don't know for sure yet. But it certainly could be. Right, echoes. Oops, sorry, I've slipped, gone too far. Someone was asking about would having previous pneumonia be a problem? Well, depends on the type of pneumonia, but most types of pneumonia you can get it and your body can eradicate it, eradicate the disease completely, and you can be completely cured. So it shouldn't make too much difference. What probably will make a difference, though, and predispose people to more severe disease is pre-existing degenerative lung disease. So, for example, in COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, there's loss of the natural cilia, these hairs that waft the mucus up into the back of the throat to be coughed up. And there's also fibrosis in the bronchial passages, causing narrowing of the bronchial passages. And those two things together mean that anything that gets down into the small airways has great difficulty getting up again. So if you inhale some dust down into your small bronchioles, you'll cough it up. It'll be wafted up on your cilia, and then you'll cough it up. But of course, if your cilia are defective or lost, and your airways are narrowed with scar tissue, then that's not going to happen so much. So the infection is going to stay down in the lungs. So previous pneumonia, I would say no, probably not. Existing chest pathology like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, yes, it will predispose to further infections. I get asked a lot of questions about people with asthma. Now, what asthma is asthma is an inflammatory condition of the small airways of the bronchial passages. So let's see if this works. So in asthma, we have the small airways here, the bronchioles. That would be what you call a terminal bronchiole. These are very small. They no longer have any cartilage in their walls. And these break down into smaller airways called respiratory bronchioles that have some alveoli in their walls. And these go into the alveolar air sacs, like this. So terminal bronchiole, respiratory bronchiole, alveolar air sac. And this is similar as well, alveoli here, to increase the surface area than the alveolar air sacs. They're described as hollow bunches of grapes, nice big surface area, 100 square metres in your lungs at the moment of nice square meterage of surface area over which gaseous exchange can take place. Now the problem with asthma is that inflammation occurs in these small bronchioles here. So these become inflamed. And when the walls become inflamed, that takes up space and that narrows the lumen, the passage for the air to go through. And also the inflammation makes them constrict and go smaller, so you get a bronchoconstriction. And also you produce lots and lots of mucus. So the trouble is when there's viral infection, for example, the viral infection is going to cause some inflammation. And because people with asthma have hypersensitive airways, their airways could become inflamed and constrict and become edematous more readily than people without asthma. So the hypersensitivity of people with asthma's airways, who have asthma, that their airways could mean that they are more prone to developing asthma if they get the viral infection. Now that is usually okay because we're actually quite good at treating acute asthmatic attacks. So the thing is to have your inhalers. Now, the thing I would caution about here is the brown inhalers have got steroid in them, and the blue inhalers are bronchodilators, the preventers and the treaters. So if you have got asthma, I would ask your doctor that if you get an infection, a viral infection of your lung, should you carry on taking the brown one? Because steroids can reduce the efficiency of the immune system, and that really is a question for your own individual doctor. So if you've got asthma, I would ask that question now, see what your doctor recommends if you do get this infection in terms of taking your brown one, but the blue one will relieve the bronchoconstriction as normal. And in more aggressive treatments are needed, we can do that in hospital. We treat these things very readily and commonly in A&E departments. So asthma, it might induce the asthma. So pre-existing airways disease with lung damage, yes, I think that will predispose to the infection. People with asthma, it may predispose to asthmatic attacks. That's possible. So worth thinking about that ahead and having a word with your doctor before the infection comes to your area would be one heck of a good idea. And get stocks in. We need to be prepared. The Chinese have taken all these quarantine measures, and that's bought us a bit of time. And we really need to make the best of that time to prepare for this coming infection. No, I'm not ill. I've just had a cough for the past few weeks. I get colds every winter. It's a terrible winter in the north of England. Why would anyone live in the north of England? Right. Right. Old Beer has asked, if we know that the virus lives on surfaces for 28 days, why didn't they stop imports? Well, we don't know that, actually. Now, the studies on this were done during the SARS outbreak in 2002-2003. And it was found that the SARS analogue viruses they were using to study this were able to live on stainless steel for, in some cases, up to about 2 weeks, but certainly 5 days or more. Warmer conditions meant the virus lasted for less time. It survived for longest at 5 degrees centigrade. So why didn't they stop packages from China? Well, I read the American Center for Disease Control literature on this, and they said there's probably little risk or probably no risk. They didn't say there was no risk. So what I've been telling people to do is to leave their packages for a few weeks and then open them if they're worried about them. So they didn't stop them because Centre for Disease Control in the States was saying there's probably very little risk, I think is the answer to that question. And I tend to agree with them, there probably is very little risk. But if you're worried about it at all, just leave the package for a month and then any viruses that are there will be dead after a period of time. And especially if you warm it up, if you warm the package up a bit, then that will allow the virus plenty of time to die. I live in Latvia. Should I be worried? The short answer to that is yes. I think this is going to be a pandemic, and that means it's probably going to go everywhere. Someone's asking about the treatment for myocarditis. Well, the treatment for viral myocarditis would be to give antiviral drugs. And for this infection at the moment, we don't have any. Now, the Chinese are doing a lot of clinical trials on this at the moment. But as of now, we have no treatment for viral myocarditis caused by COVID-19 infection. So the answer, I'm afraid, is none. It's the same with Coxsackie viruses that sometimes cause myocardial damage. I don't think we can treat those either. I would say that the important thing is if you have an infection is to rest. Don't make the heart work harder. Whatever you do, if you don't feel well, go to bed, rest. Stop doing normal duties. If you've got a viral infection and you do lots of exercise, that is a risky thing to do for your heart. Don't do that. But if the myocardium is actually damaged, it's a muscle, and muscle cells do not divide, so there is no effective treatment for that, unfortunately, other than heart transplants. There's no particular treatment for that, which shows why we have to try and prevent that as much as we can. So Myocarditis treatment, not really. Should we take protease inhibitor supplements? Protease. Well, a protease is just an enzyme which digests protein, and you have that in your stomach. So no, I don't think you should take protease inhibitor supplements. In fact, if you have any disease goes into your stomach, you want your digestive enzymes to digest it and break it down. Okay, Mr. Dot, how do you test for the virus? Right. Well, normally for viral infections, I don't know how much background you want here, but see, a virus is, let me try and go